Throughout the world, there are currently over 10,000 cities. What's even crazier is that just 50 years ago, half of these didn't even exist yet. But that's not to say every new city is a success. In fact, there are plenty of large cities on Earth that have been, for one reason or another, completely abandoned. Some of these cities once housed thousands of people, but due to an array of circumstances, from nuclear radiation to depleted resources, now lie almost completely abandoned. You can actually visit many of the places we're about to discuss, and you can get some pretty spooky photo opportunities in the process. From Pripyat, Ukraine to New York, here are 5 massive cities that are completely abandoned. The most famous nuclear accident in history was the meltdown at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine back in April of 1986. But before this accident happened, thousands of workers kept everything running. It was very busy and required around-the-clock work. So the town of Pripyat was built very close to the reactor that would house the workers and their families. Eventually, the city would grow to nearly 50,000 people. There was a school, a gymnasium, a hospital, and every amenity needed for the comfort of the workers and their families. On April 26th of 1986, the city was shaken by the explosion of the Chernobyl reactor meltdown only 2 miles away. However, because the government at the time tried to downplay everything, there was no sense of urgency to leave. It was discovered a few days later that the problem was much more dire than they were being told. The blaze burned for 10 days, releasing deadly radioactive material into the air and sickening nearly every worker that battled the blaze. Everyone left the city in a mad rush, leaving everything behind. Now, 34 years later, even though the city isn't riddled with radiation as it once was, levels are still dangerously high. Apartments that were abandoned still have much of their furniture. The school has desks and blackboards still set up as if the students could return any day to pick up where they left off. But nature has taken over the city. Animals have made the buildings their homes. Trees and vines have taken over the town square. It is the ghostly image of a once busy and vibrant community brought to ruin by human error. Ambition can drive people to achieve and create amazing things. But sometimes, being overly ambitious can lead to disaster. That was the case with the Chinese city of Ordos, located in the remote province of Inner Mongolia. This city was built on top of an enormous coal deposit, accounting for 1/6 of China's coal reserves. In the early 90s and 2000s, private mining companies got the rights to mine these deposits, which generated a lot of revenue for China. So, the government decided to build this city from scratch, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate and infrastructure. But within a few years, the market was not nearly as strong as the Chinese government anticipated. There was a large abundance of housing that was paired with very high property taxes. It was made even worse by the fact that the construction was sketchy at best. In the rush to throw the city up, many builders did not adhere to code. So, the city that was built to house and entertain over 300,000 people only saw about 1/3 move in, and they eventually trickled out as well. Today, Ordos is largely a ghost town with a very large majority of the population gone. It is estimated that maybe 10,000 people remain. An athletic field that can hold 35,000 spectators remains empty. Entire apartment buildings, some over 20 stories tall, are unoccupied, but still owned by people who think of them as long-term investments. To look at it makes one feel almost as if everyone left overnight. Also, because this is not exactly an older city, things are largely undisturbed and in relatively the same condition as the day they were built, making this ghost town all the more eerie. This next one has to be my favorite on the list because it is located in an area that you would least expect, right next to New York City. North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in New York City's East River between the mainland Bronx and Rikers Island. Uninhabited until 1885, this island became the home of Riverside Hospital. During this time, diseases such as smallpox and tuberculosis were big dangers to the population. so this became a place where those infected with these, as well as some of the others like typhoid fever, were taken for quarantine. Following World War II, during a national housing crisis, the island housed war veterans who were students at local colleges, as well as their families. But after the crisis subsided, the island was abandoned until the 1950s, when a center opened to treat adolescent drug addicts. Many of these addicts were locked in their rooms while they suffered through intense withdrawal symptoms. But reports came back that these people were being held against their will, along with accusations of staff corruption. So the facility closed in 1963 and has remained closed ever since. Since then, various ideas have been floated as to what should be done with the island. However, none of them have come to fruition. North Brother Island is now abandoned and serves as a sanctuary for herons and other shorebirds. Although it is off limits to the public, the dilapidated remains can still be seen. The hospitals, which used to house quarantined patients, now shelters wildlife. The rooms which imprisoned recovering drug addicts are now shells of what was a nightmarish experience for many. I must say, I find it odd how an island so close to one of the most wealthy and developed areas in the world has remained abandoned and decaying for so many years. Located just off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, Hashima Island is an abandoned coal mining operation that is a symbol of Japan's rapid industrialization age. In 1887, coal was discovered under the sea floor around this area. This 16-acre island was then established as a base for its operations. As the mining operation grew, the government built housing on the island for the workers and their families. Eventually, in the 1950s, the island reached a population of 5,229 people. During this time, it became one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, averaging 835 people per acre. Since there was little room to expand out, the island expanded upwards. New areas were built over the years to accommodate the families. Eventually, the island would soon come to include a school, hospital, town hall, a cinema, swimming pool, and shops. Finally, in the 1970s, the mine became depleted. Petroleum replaced coal, and the workers left along with their families. Today, the island has become a tourist attraction. With the apartments and seawalls still very much intact, people can see the cramped life that the workers had to endure while living on Hashima Island. The government has taken time to restore many of the walls and buildings there in order to preserve as much of the original look as possible. Located on the Caribbean island of Montserrat in the Lesser Antilles, Plymouth was established in 1632, being one of the first European colonies in the area. For a few hundred years, it blossomed as a great city, serving as a hub for trade and shipping in the Caribbean area. But there was a problem. The island of Montserrat is also home to Soufriere Hills volcano, and on July 18, 1995, things for Plymouth went south very quickly. That day, the volcano, previously thought to be dormant, suddenly woke up and erupted. Luckily, it wasn't an overly violent eruption. The city was spared long enough for most of the residents to flee. As the volcano continued to spew lava and ash, the remaining residents realized how big of a threat it actually was. So, in 1997, the last of the people left and the city remained permanently abandoned. It was a good thing that everyone decided to leave when they did. Within a few months of the last residents leaving, the volcano erupted in a series of violent explosions. Pyroclastic flows burned the vast majority of the town, leaving it in rubble. Today, the city is nothing more than a ghost town, with very few of the structures remaining. Although it is still technically considered the capital city of Montserrat, it only exists that way on paper. No other country in the world has a ghost town that serves as its capital city. Visitors to this city will have views of some ash-covered houses scattered among a barren landscape. Ghost towns are some of the most wondrous and intriguing things on this planet. They're full of history. Words would never do justice to the stories that these abandoned cities tell. Stories of disaster, failure, and flaw. But there are more ghost towns than you may realize, and they have their own unique stories to tell as well. If you want to see another video like this, then be sure to click the link on screen now. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.